still have 5 minutes, so feel free to.
I just like to warn people ahead of time when I start the recording.
Second?
No, my feet don't. This one's higher than the other one, so my feet don't touch the ground.
Can't you put it down?
Oh, probably. I don't want to mess with it. It's fine. I shouldn't even say it.
That might have to tilt folks to drop you out in front a little bit farther, so you don't touch. Like, there's one that has a drop.
I think it's the other one. It's fine. I'm fine, honestly.
Yeah, that one there drops you, stops this one. You have to like rock it though, and then it'll come forward. It'll allow it to come forward, so you have to go back and.
Next thing you know, I'll be falling out the back of it. That would be horrible.
Dump it right out the
Yeah.
table.
Yeah, that would be horrible. We can all hear that. We should shoot. Yes.
I call to order the Board of Trustee regular meeting for November 21st, 2023, and the time is now 6 p.m. Trustee Johnson, would you like to give the invocation? A moment of silence for the toss for
A moment of silence as I read the names off of the deceased from the terrible accident we had on Interstate 70. John Mosley, Jeffrey Worrell, Caitlin Owens, Dave Knapp, Christy Gaynor, and Shannon Wigfield. Dear Lord, be with these families as they lost their loved ones, and that happened right here in our township. Help the first responders that had to go through the ordeal, seeing that, the other students that had to go through the ordeal. Some are still injured. We just ask you to heal those people and heal them in their minds also. You bring peace to them. Be with us as we meet tonight, and be with our servicemen that are working to keep us safe, just like our first responders did. Amen.
Amen. Please join me with the pledge of
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Ms. Varian.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Ms. McKee?
Here. I move to approve the flexibility in the agenda to move the executive session after the public comments. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion, please.
Don't we have to move to approve the agenda? That's not your motion?
No, sir. No. This is the flexibility.
Okay, well, my discussion would be, once again, this agenda is not a cooperative agenda. It was released yesterday, less than 26 hours before the meeting, to myself as trustee and the residents. You cannot properly prepare for a meeting with that. Some agenda items weren't even provided any information. And I believe that the presentations here are listed as prior to public comments, and on the motion sheet, it looks like there's going to be three items that are voted on. I don't think the board should take any action without first listening to our residents. So I would make a motion to move public comments to before the presentations. Again, to allow the public to provide input on all board matters.
I think you have a pending motion.
I do. For
There was
the
a
motion
and a
is to,
second.
yeah.
Now I move to amend that.
Your motion is to amend.
Well, there's no second.
You just have to ask.
Is there a second?
No.
Now you vote on your original.
Well, we'll vote on the original motion. On the original motion, which is to have the flexibility to move the executive session. Roll call, please. Ms.
Mr.
Barron.
Evans?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. Okay, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Evans?
Well, isn't there discussion?
Discussion, you want to do discussion? What do you
I'm a
discussion?
little confused here, but
No, it shouldn't be.
I'll vote no for the same reasons that everything voted on should be after we hear from the public.
Roll call, Mr. Barron, please.
Evans?
No.
Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. McKee?
Yes.
So you're still showing you don't care about the residents, however, even after the election.
I would ask you to stop talking, okay? It's not about caring about the residents, because you're not getting your way. I need you to stop, please. I move to adopt the minutes for October 3rd, 2023. I move to adopt the minutes for October 24th, 2023. And I move to adopt the minutes for November 7th, 2023 as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion, please.
Yes, once again, these minutes do not properly reflect the actions of the board and the true discussions. They're whitewashed and biased. I'd like to move that we separate the November 7th special meeting from the October 3rd and October 24th and deal with them separately. So I move to amend that and deal with those separately.
Reason? The reason to do that?
Because the November 7th is pretty much straightforward, and there's no issues with it. The others aren't. So I would vote to approve the November 7th, not the others.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion?
Nope, he's voting on the minute.
I'm sorry?
He voted to pull those out, right? Pull those center seven out. So we'll take those out. We'll do the first two, right?
Yeah.
We have to vote on it. Yeah, vote.
Okay.
Is there any more discussion? Mr. Evans?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
This is on the amendment.
This is on your
On the amendment,
motion
then yes, to pull it out.
to separate. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You voted no, but you said you
I
wanted.
voted yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
McKee?
No.
And then the original
So
one.
back to the original one for, this is October 3rd and October 24th, correct?
Yes.
Approval of those minutes. All right.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Evans?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes.
So now you have to make a roll call to approve November 7th.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, now you need to have a roll call to approve the
So
number
somebody have to
7.
make a motion to
I will
approve.
make a motion to approve November 7th.
I'll second.
Okay. No discussion?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. Okay, I would like to turn the meeting over to Mr. Bill Lozier for an update on the Pike Street project, please.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'm going to wait for our consultant to look up the
Oh, okay,
showings.
okay, no problem.
Yeah, it's gonna be behind, it's gonna project behind you.
Or it's already up there.
Okay.
You want us to turn those
I
side
was
lights
gonna
on?
say, let's turn the side lights on.
So they're back there on that side or they in the back?
Second, can you see now?
I see okay?
Boy, oh boy, that's gonna be hard to see, but as big as we can make it.
Zoom in on,
I'm gonna have to go up there and give everybody a general idea of what we're talking about here. I'm Bill Lozier, I'm the Director of Projects for the Licking County TID. The township is in an agreement with the TID, to reconstruct Pike Street in 2 phases. Phase 1 is east of 310, phase 2 is west of 310. So we were funded $2.6 million from MORPS Inc. Those are federal funds for the reconstruction of the easterly part, which is phase 1. That program is an 80% match, meaning that the township would paid 20%. The engineer's estimate so far is, Scott, was it 3.2 or 3.4 million? Information. Right now, I think the township is responsible for whatever 20% of 3.4 million is. Come on, man, you're good at 680,000. Yeah, 680,000. So there was a gap between, and Trustee Evans, you brought this up previously. At the westerly end of the project is a development that is multi-use, and it is connecting to Pike Street. It's connecting at Pike Street at a location that doesn't match where our project is, so there is a gap between the two projects. I'll go up and show you.
Yeah, one second, you go up and show us.
Probably have to make it a little smaller than that, Scott. Zoom out. Oh boy, okay. So, in general, this is the new development, and this is an overhead view of it. US Route 40 is out here, and current Pike Street connects into it right there. So under this plan of this development, there would be a new intersection for that development that would be squared up rather than the skew angle that exists right now. ODOT has told the developer that they need to provide a traffic signal because of the increased traffic that all of these homes and businesses are going to generate. Every time we do a development, we have to do something called a traffic impact study. And if you impact the public road, you have to mitigate those impacts. In this case, it was a new traffic signal. I don't think that there was any requirement for turn lanes. I think all of the lanes were already there. It was a 5-lane section, but there is a requirement for a traffic signal. So the development further would put a stub of a road farther to the west on Pike Street. This section in between is to be abandoned, that section of Pike Street. Okay, so our project is farther to the west on Pike Street, and it ends at this stream, and it always has. That left a gap of 550 feet plus or minus between the two projects. And if we look at what our project would look like, let's go to the next exhibit. We should have had our last exhibit. This is a slice out of the road. If you're standing on the road, it's called a typical section. The project beginning at State Route 310 all the way down to a point where, how far does it go? Right here?
The current project ends right about, yep.
There's the stream.
Yes.
There would be parking on both sides and two 12-foot lanes, curbs, curb and gutter, a pathway on the north side and a sidewalk on the south side.
Yes.
Okay, so then we would match a project at the development, from the development that would be similar, or we would have this 550-foot gap. So the proposal here tonight is to extend the project to make the two projects match. Is there any questions so far? I wish I had better exhibits to work with, but we probably should have brought our old ones.
They
So-
have full-size printouts of your.
Okay. Okay. So, this of course comes at a cost. There's two primary things. I'm going to send an email to the trustees describing this with these exhibits. So there's additional engineering and there's additional construction costs. The additional construction cost was estimated by our consultant, Scott Haynes at Verdantis, to be $800,000 plus or minus $818,188.83. The additional engineering, the proposal, which we thought was a fair proposal, is $80,331.25. So we had a meeting with ODOT, Trustee McKee, Nita, the developer, our consultant, and the developer's consultant, and there was a general agreement that there would be cost sharing for this gap. And the general agreement, and I hate to speak for anybody right now because there's still a memorandum of understanding or a memorandum of agreement, whatever legal document that your legal counsel decides you should have, about how the cost should be shared. But in general, the developer agreed to fund all or a part of the construction if the trustees funded the engineering. So that $818,000 cost estimate, I think that it needs to be reviewed. I think for sure the developer would want to review the construction cost estimate, and then let the negotiation begin on how much that the developer would pay for the construction. At that time, we would get into a revised intergovernmental agreement with the township, the TID would, to revise the original agreement to include this additional work. If the trustees don't want to do this, I think what we would do is resurface that portion of the road and stripe it, but it wouldn't have a pathway or a sidewalk, and it wouldn't have curbs and gutters. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but there would be a 550-foot gap. One thing that I would like to say about this is kind of outside my purview. Go back to the original. The purpose and need, or the spirit of the project, was beautifying Pike Street and kind of making it a village center. I like this proposal. At first, I couldn't understand it very well and why we would want to do that, but now I see the wisdom in this. That little hook in the road and that abandonment of that piece of Pike Street will probably prevent Pike Street from becoming a cut-through. Rather, the cut-through would be the development itself. Having said that, it would be pretty circuitous if I wanted to make a left at that new intersection with the new traffic signal and go through the development. In the end, everybody does what their phone tells them to do on which way to go. So it'll be a matter of travel time to see what happens. But I can't imagine that there would be too many vehicles that would come through that signal, take a left, then take a right, then take another left and go on Pike Street. So I think it'll cut down on the traffic on Pike Street. Hopefully it will keep traffic on 40 and 310 where it belongs, instead of Pike Street being a cut through. That abandoned section, we've talked about this, that is keeping that public right of way. There is that the area where there's the Route 40 marker, the historic marker? And we thought that that could be an access for anybody who wants to go and see that, but if we kept it a public access, it would be available for public viewing. I think that there's always an opportunity to abandon that section of road. When I was county engineer, there's a process that's not very difficult to go through to abandon public right of way. If the maintaining authority sees no public use for the public right of way, they can abandon it. That would be an option to you. Again, this is kind of like talking about the development which is already being approved by Licking County Planning. So it's kind of outside my scope here, but I did want to make that comment that I really see value in the way this is laid out. With that, I'll take any questions.
I do have a question. I've always been concerned. We have trucks going down Mayflower. We've got trucks going down Lynch Road, which is a real outlet. Trucks are going to go down there. How are they going to navigate that sharp turn when they do get there? I mean, isn't that a concern?
Where are we talking about?
But when they turn into, they're gonna come in, they're gonna turn into that development, that you got that intersection before you go back up to Pike. Is that gonna be able to handle the large trucks? Because they won't go down the Pike.
I didn't review those plans, but I know that Licking County Planning has a set of design standards contained in their subdivision regulations that accommodates truck turns.
Well, I believe, I can be correct if I'm wrong, that there was a variance granted on the radiuses and that, where the streets or intersections is narrow. I don't know if it's at that intersection, but that'd be my concern, because while they shouldn't go down it, they're going to. And
I can't answer it. That's
shouldn't we be looking at that while we're looking at, because we're gonna have to deal with it, we should be looking at the whole picture, not just this section, let them figure that out.
Well, that's under Licking County Planning's purview. That's not part of this project.
Right, but if we're gonna abandon that section, or if they did get in there, I understand you wanna try to minimize the cut through by not having direct
I
access.
probably shouldn't have brought that up because it's really not part of what we're doing. And I just brought it up, and I shouldn't have, I guess, but, this is a question for the county engineer and the Licking County Planning Commission, but I can tell you it's been approved by them. And I can tell you that the process requires looking at turning radiuses, and the geometric design for truck turning radiuses have been around for 100 years. I assume that they met their own standards, but I can't really answer to it because it's a different process. The approval of the plat and the engineering design is over with. I don't know if the township had a chance to review it. I assume you did, but it's not part of what we're talking about. Is all to the west of the tie-in location.
Right, but what's gonna be on there is gonna funnel into that. And the other question I did have is, I believe the prior plan had the sidewalks and that away from the road. It looks like this new one is at the road.
Did we get rid of the tree line? No, Scott. This has always been, the
Correct.
pathway has been, we got rid of the tree line.
The only place in some sections, and through here we have the tree lawn, through downtown, we got rid of the tree lawn to add the bike path.
Yeah. My question is, when we discussed before, I had that kind of impromptu open house to kind of let people know that it was gonna go to Morpsey, it was gonna come back to the public to provide input in that. I'm a little concerned that we're doing all this design and we're gonna do this and that before we've gotten that input from the public. So why are we doing more design that if it could possibly change, unless, I think it's a bad look to design everything, give it to the public, basically saying, this is what you're getting, your input doesn't mean anything. I think we're kind of getting this before that, you know?
Well, we haven't progressed at all since then, for various reasons. We talked about a public meeting. I think we're ready for a public meeting.
Yeah, it's a process. I mean, under the federal guidelines, we have to follow,
Oh, yeah.
so.
We had to get scoped by ODOT. That's what the thing was. When we got the federal money, ODOT scoping process, we had to go through that.
Right.
ODOT kind of comes in and takes over your business a little bit, and they're gonna probably want to approve the process you have for public involvement. We're probably ready for public involvement now.
Should we do that before we decide on moving forward with this additional
I think that's up to you.
scope and design?
That's up to you.
I mean, if we're gonna move forward, it's a good deal, because they're gonna cover the costs and we're gonna do the design or share the design. But again, I'm a big believer in public input, doing what the people want, not telling them what they're gonna get.
Well, it's not only a good idea, it's a federal requirement. So there will be an open house style probably, and everybody will get a chance for input on that. You know, this business about getting too far out ahead, that's you know, you gotta do some, or you can't see what we're proposing. But you can't do too much, or if you do too much detail, you spend a lot of Scott's time in engineering details, and then we gotta pay him to redo it. So yeah, we've gotten to the point where we're ready for public involvement. I think we were close before, but we got the federal money and went through ODOT scoping, and then actually, we wanted to get this settled too, because we should bring this to the public, this proposal as well, because this is now part of the project.
But are we gonna expend that 88,000 or 80,000 before the public hearing?
We won't spend it all. It'll be just like the rest of the project, is you'll spend enough of it so that everybody can see how it impacts their front yards. There'll be some rough cross sections drawn up. We won't spend the whole 80,000 because we will have to do some surveying so that we can do some basic engineering so that we can take it to the public just like the rest of the project. So, I'm to the point where I can't speak for the township and what the township wants to do, but I'm also to the point where I can't speak for the developer and how the developer wants to participate. I did mention some things that were discussed at a meeting. Really what happens now is between the township and the developer on what kind of cost sharing can take place. And I don't know if it's okay if Ron wants to say anything about the project, if you want to allow it.
Absolutely.
Hello, Ron Sabatino. Our company is the developer of the adjacent land. Can we bring up the other slide?
The one with your plan, Ron?
Yeah, that's perfect. So this gap exists because the first phase is coming down, and they started that even before, our plan was approved many years ago of how far that plan was going to go. And there are, I think, 3 parcels, as you'll see that creek crossing the road, there are 3 parcels east of it that we don't own, that are, I think they're large single family houses that set back. Our improvements, although not shown, go to that dark line just west of that future pond. And then that is the remaining gap of where those 3 parcels are. I think that $80,000, I've looked at what has to be done there. We've had a couple meetings with Mr. Lozier, with our engineer. I think that his requested fee is a fair fee. I think it allows him to spend some of it before you have the public hearing where you can bring more information, you have something to look at and have some public discussion. I think it makes sense to make the connection. I mean, at some year or decade in the future, it's likely that those homes evolve to different types of uses, like the village of Powell did, and it becomes a nice, different community. Competes with our retail that we're doing, but it becomes a nice village community setting. It's all walkable, so it makes sense to connect the bike paths. We've worked in many townships and cities, wealthy, probably one of the most wealthy ones in certainly in Licking County. You've got revenue sources that are on a continuous, infinite annuity from the existing JEDs. You have revenues from the JED that we created as a statutory developer that I think we've got hundreds of thousands of dollars that came in this year. And you should use these monies for the public improvements that advance the community. We indicated at our meeting that we would help participate this. We have a TIF on our land, and we're studying, how much extra revenue we have to, after the sources that we've already agreed to are exhausted, that I would advance some amount of money to help fill the gap and we would work with the township to put it on our TIF, to include it in our TIF. It does not have to be in our property to be part of our TIF. It just has to be something that benefits our property, and to some degree, this benefits the property. We have no obligation to build this, we have no obligation to contribute to it, yet we're willing to do such and sit down with the township, with the current and future board, and work that out. So I suggest authorize him some level of expenditure so he can bring something to show the public for the public meeting. Thank you.
So just one question, just to be clear, are you saying that you're willing to participate in the construction costs
Yes.
contingent on the TIF inclusion, or that you would like to, but?
No, we're willing to participate at some level. I think that you have a new board, we'd like to see a little more cooperation, a little less costly behavior. I will, not that it's on point here, but I will say in these 80-some communities that worked in the past, that almost all of them deliver the agenda the day before the meeting as well, Mark. So I think it's all cooperation, and we need your cooperation in order to bring this development forward that has been sitting for 4 years, as our other ones are, because the reviewers do not work for developers. Licking County Planning Commission, the county engineer, Southwest Licking, work for you, the township, not for me. They work for the township. We submit our plans, you send them over to the county, they work for the township. It has been helpful in trying to get all three of those that have been dilatory in their reviews, all three of them, as not only this project, but our other project in Refugee Road, set for 3.5 years, while they take 8 months to review plans, where most other places take 90 days. And we need this township and this future board and their administrator to help the developers to accomplish plans on a timely basis for things that you choose to approve. That's a request.
I'd just like to correct on one thing. Townships share their agenda with the public usually the day before some of them, but they don't report it to trustees. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Bill, I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
On there, when you made the presentation, you said the cost was going to be borne by the developer, and then the design fees were going to be shared. It sounds like it's a little different now. Maybe is it the whole thing's up for share, or where are we at?
Yeah, I can't answer for how you negotiate with the developer. I can tell you that my takeaway at the meeting was that was in general the way it was going to be. But I can tell you this, that Ron at the meeting said that there's going to be some limitation to how much he contributes. And the place to start is to get a construction cost estimate to see how much the thing costs. Regardless of what happens, the negotiation that goes on right now between Ron and the township and the memorandum of understanding that you create, the intergovernmental agreement with the TID is going to say that whatever the cost of the project is paid for by the township. In other words, if there's a gap, we will do our best to estimate it, you'll do your best to negotiate however much that the developer wants to give for construction, and then whatever's left, it has to be paid for by the township, along with the 20% matching federal funds. So let the negotiation begin, Mark. I still think it's a good deal. You said all along, I ended our project at the stream because your predecessor said that's where we need to end the project.
To have a gap was.
And so there's a gap, and then they developed their project and there was a gap. We were going parallel and there's a gap. We would have probably paid for it with this project anyhow. Maybe our ask of Morpsey would have been a little bit more, presumably to include this, so that's another way you could look at it. But here we are, we have this thing, and that's why we got around the table with all the parties and tried to negotiate something equitable. Certainly the design fees would have already, you would have had to pay for that either way. Yeah, that's where we are. If the board decides not to do it, I think that we'll, pave it, and stripe it, and there'll be a gap. There'll be a gap in the pathways. Ultimately, when we discussed this, and I think it was your idea, Mark, that we want to set this pathway up so that it ends at US 40, and then go for a grant and see if we can't get a bridge or a tunnel across to the new park. I think it's a wonderful idea, and it sounds crazy, but drive down Route 16 and look at that pedestrian bridge that goes from the Y over to the OSU Newark. It would not be unprecedented, and I think there's funding programs out there. And so there you go, you would connect your park to a nice downtown village center. So anyhow, yeah, it's unfortunate we got to be here talking about modifications, but I've never been involved in an engineering project where there wasn't modifications to contracts and scopes of work. So, any other questions?
Madam President, may I ask you a couple questions?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to make sure that I was clear. The engineering fees that you're talking about, they would be engineering for both this part of the Pike Street project as well as the development on the other side of 310. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
So it's not just engineering for this part of the project.
So both sides.
It's on both sides of
We
310.
started out
Right.
with both sides, but when they did the emergency fundings, it was just for
Correct.
that side.
We don't have funding
Correct.
for that
Correct.
second part, but
For
this
construction.
engineering is
Yes.
for that second part, includes for that
He is
second part.
continuing to design on the west side as well. I think we should take phase 1 to the public first.
Yeah.
And you got your survey in the can for both sides of 310?
Yes, we've already surveyed both sides of it.
So I think probably we should hold the public involvement off on the west side. There is urgency here because we need to get this started and show some evidence that we're going to spend it, because we want to go back to Morpsey for phase 2, for funding for phase 2. If you remember, we tried the first time to get funding for phase 1 and phase 2, and it got rejected, and we were coached up to break the project into 2 pieces. And I said, I don't want to make an ask and do half of the project, and they said that that will benefit you when you apply for phase 2 funding if you show that you can accomplish phase 1. So they're on a 2-year cycle. We're probably, I haven't kept up with my Morpsey emails, and I don't know, they send a lot. I'm sure that we're down to about a year. I think what they've done so far in my emails is they set up the rules for the program for next year. So we'll be starting probably January to apply for phase 2. And, I handled that for you guys last time. Rosalind, you attended those meetings as well. And I intend to do that again. So keep that in mind, but I do think we need to show progress on this.
So how much of the 80,000 is only for this gap section? You were saying 80,000, all of it?
I
So
think
it's
what
not
Nita
on
was
the west
saying.
side, it's only for the gap.
Correct, other than the required public involvement process that we have to go through for.
Was there some ODOT requirements too for the whole
Correct.
project?
Yes.
So, yeah, there's some cost in there. When this thing became an ODOT project, there were some other ODOT requirements that had to be accommodated. And, yeah.
Again, when we talk about the west side, I think we need to have public involvement early to see what they want, and then kind of decide it also.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems like we're designing it and saying, here.
we can debate this, and we can do it either way, but I would advise you to put the effort in to getting this side ready for public involvement, because we have the construction funds. And then, get a clear idea of when we're going to construct phase 2, because we probably have to go back to the public. Everything will change. If it's several years down the road, you should probably do public involvement a little closer to construction. That's why I'm saying it doesn't mean that we can't show some things at the same public meeting. about phase 2. We just won't have as many details. Is that fair to say? You probably won't cut sections.
We're focusing our time on the first, on phase 1 first.
But again, Mark, it's up to you. I mean, we can talk about that. Anything else?
No, I was just gonna say, I think part of the important part, and I know that it was important to me to be able to understand this part of the project, is the difference in the fact that this is a federally funded, this is an ODOT project, and so it has different requirements than the High Point, than Mr. Sabatino's project, which is it being controlled, approved, however you want to call it, by the county. And so there are just different timetables and different requirements. And I know for me, coming in and having to learn about the project and where did it stand and where did it come from and where is it going, it was helpful for me to be able to understand the differences between the two projects.
We're going to draft an intergovernmental agreement between the TID, and our attorney already started on it, that memorializes all of what we've talked about into that document. Is the what we call a modification of the intergovernmental agreement that says what each party is responsible for. We've got a draft of that. I thought I would have it in my hands tonight to show the trustees, but for your next month's meeting, it would be great if you would have negotiated and gotten your MOU with the developer about this construction cost thing. And then right on the heels of that, you can sign the intergovernmental agreement so that we can continue work here. We can continue work, but it would be nice to get all of this squared away so that we can start designing the thing in earnest and get public input and that sort of thing.
So tonight you're not asking for anything?
That's not up to me. I thought maybe that would be the case, but I see here that I don't know if there's a board action tonight or not. That's not my part of it. I see that I'm on here to give a presentation.
If you could move forward, you could copy me on the communication so I can be up to date on all this stuff. So this comes to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
I would like to turn the meeting over to Nate Green, with Skinell Development.
Good evening, trustees. Good to see you all. My name is Nate Green. I'm with the Montrose Group. It says I'm with Skinell Development, but I just represent them on that. I don't work for them. But what I'm here to talk about tonight is an update to that project. You all are very aware of that project, on 40 and Tollgate Road. There's the 43 acres in the kind of the northern part of that site that they look to develop. And we would like to talk with you about potentially entering into a development and compensation agreement between the trustees, between Skinell, and between Southwest Lincoln and Lincoln County, Southwest Lincoln Schools. You all were emailed, I believe, a copy of that today, so I don't expect you to have read it thoroughly. I don't expect, unless you really want to vote on it tonight, but I wanted to talk about that, present it to you, and then have discussions between certainly now and your next meeting. This development and compensation agreement, I hope, is similar to what you've seen in other developments that you've done. This would part of what's being done here is that Skinell would enter this property into the JED. There's a JED that's already there for the FedEx facility. This would add that property to the JED. It would add any buildings that are built on the site into the JED. The employees that are going to be in those buildings would pay income tax to the JED, and then the JED distribution of those income taxes will be done in a similar manner that's been done already. And I can talk through that if you want, but it's done. It's already been done for FedEx. It's done for several of your developments throughout the township. They've they're looking at potential development of several buildings on the site. They don't have this is speculative industrial development at this point. They could do, what they projected is they could do 500,000 to 800,000 square feet of development there. They projected that would create between 200 and 400 jobs over a 3 to 5 year period, which would create $9 million to $18 million in payroll, which would obviously benefit all of the entities in the JED through the income tax and the distribution of those funds, the income tax to those entities. The other part of the development and compensation agreement is the approval of a tax abatement for the site, 100% 15-year tax abatement. That tax abatement, as you all are aware, in order to get that level of abatement, it has to be approved by the school district, by Southwest Lincoln Schools, which that has already been done. There's already an agreement, which I believe I sent to you, or you have. I think you should got that last week. That agreement that's between Skinell and between and the schools. The schools receive compensation through that agreement. They also would receive compensation through this agreement, through the JED, if you all are in agreement to that. I know there's been a couple things that have been discussed around, they've been working, Skinell's been working with the county on the creek that's there and trying to figure out the issues there and getting that so I think there's some ponding there and things that are not good. They have been working with the county. The county has approved their plan, and they're working to mitigate that and be sure that issue with the creek that runs through there has been accepted and is not an issue anymore. As a matter of fact, we met with the county, I think 2 months ago, to talk about that, so they are aware of that. The other thing, and I know that this is something you've all talked about, it's something that I know that the residents near there are concerned about, is the sound barrier that's there. And there's been talk potentially raising the sound barrier. There's been talk of what to do to help so that the sound is mitigated. I would say that it's cost prohibitive to raise the sound barrier. That is because it's already in place. It's difficult to do that, and it is cost prohibitive for Skinell to do that. What you will see in the document is that, and it's in section 7F. Section 7, I think that's right. I'm going to say that, and I'll probably be wrong. Yeah, section 7, which is miscellaneous under F. What we would propose doing is working with the property owners that are there to provide landscaping on their side of the sound barrier, to provide additional mitigation of that sound. That could be through landscaping of trees, bushes, whatever the case may be. To allow for additional, an additional barrier there. And again, we would work with those residents that are there and talk to them about that and work for, kind of commercially viable options for the landscaping for those properties. We understand that the properties, they're right next to it, and so we want to make sure that we work with them and they're hopefully properly taken care of. So with that, that's kind of what is in the development and compensation agreement. As I said, you just got this today. It would be our goal to come back at your next meeting and have you vote on this. If you're okay with that, we can certainly work on this between now and then and work on language. You can vote on it tonight if you want. I'd love that, but I understand, Trustee Evans, to your point, you just got it. So we're certainly happy to work with you over the next month or so and get those things worked out. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
I have a question. Well, no, you can't.
Questions from the trustee.
Sorry.
I do have a question on here. There's an NCA on the other portion.
Yeah.
I don't think it mentions the NCA obligation in here for the new building.
Oh, and I believe, Mark, they would enter into the NCA if that's part of what the FedEx is. They would do the same.
And then, is there still a request from FedEx regarding modification of the JED to enter into a pilot? because that was when I was speaking with Dan Harrington quite a while ago. They wanted to modify it so their employees did not have to pay into the jet, but that they would do a pilot instead.
You know, Mark, I'll check on that, but to my knowledge, that is not true, that they're actually paying into the jet. I don't believe.
I know they are, but there was a desire to.
Okay.
Modify.
Yeah, and Mark, I don't know. I can check into that.
Okay. And then my question is, you're suggesting landscaping at the wall. The original plan required landscaping along that wall. So isn't this just what's required?
So there's Skinnell looked at putting landscaping on their side of the wall, and the challenge is that there's an easement with the sewer and water district that goes along that side, and the sewer and water district will not allow them to put trees or anything else on that side. The suggestion would be to work with property owners to put it on their side of that barrier, and provide that landscaping and the vegetation.
I believe the building plans require, and I've always said it's too narrow of a setback, but trees and that between the wall and the property line, the 8 foot.
Sure.
That doesn't seem reasonable, but that's what was passed, and I believe,
Sure.
I don't know if Mr. Singleton can verify that, but that seems to be what you're suggesting, but on the residence property.
Correct. And again, the challenge is Skinnell looked at putting it exactly as you suggest on their property, and they there's an easement there. There's a sewer and water easement that the sewer district said you can't put any vegetation there because it can eat into our.
Well, you're saying on their side, but I'm saying where it's required in the zoning that it be between the wall and the property line.
Sure, and I think that's where the challenge is with the sewer and water district.
Oh, that's where the sewer line is?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
That's my understanding anyway.
Other side of it. And then have you looked into, it says commercially reasonable cost for landscaping. Have you looked at what the cost would be in suitable, trees, vegetation, and that would actually go in there for each property? Looking at like giant green arborvitae, which go up to 30 foot. Like, what is the cost to build a wall?
Yeah, what we put in there is at $5,000 per property, but certainly we want to work with those property owners and figure out what makes sense.
So I'm saying, have you looked to see what an estimate is, or did you just choose 5,000?
Skinnell has looked into that, Mark, and yes, that's what they've looked into is that.
Can you forward that information?
I don't have it, but I can ask for it, sure.
I personally think, this is a very important topic, the Skinnell, but I think we should kind of maybe push it over to the new board that starts in January. I don't want to waste your time.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Okay.
As far as where we should go with this, to give us some more time as a new board. So that's what I would like to see happen.
Okay.
It's not up to me, it's up to the board.
Okay. All right. Other thoughts? Yeah.
I'm not going to be here in another month or so.
Okay. All right.
I would agree with that. I guess in the meantime, we can get information if you have to provide.
We can do that. Yeah, I can provide it for you. Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Sounds good. Thanks very much.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you, Robert.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm going to turn this meeting over to Mayor Begany regarding the intergovernment agreement for the Taylor Road interchange impact study. Hello.
Good evening.
Hello there.
Good evening, trustees. Thank you for taking some time. This is a project that's part of an ancillary project that we have no control over. I don't know how many of you are familiar in the audience. The Ohio Department of Transportation is looking to do a 70 interchange off Taylor Road Southwest, and kind of instead of going towards Walmart, it would actually go straight across over into Pickerington. That is scheduled right now. Originally it was scheduled for the 2030s, but right now they're actually aiming to have that in production as early as 2027 as part of a dual project with the 256 interchange. That's happening, assuming that they continue to get the funding, but based on everything that we've been told, they are going to get the funding. They've actually just gotten approval for the next step for engineering, right-of-way acquisition, things of that nature. So that is something that is happening regardless of anything else. However, I'm trying to find ways to think a little bit ahead of the game. If this is going to go into construction in 2027, we all know that there's an intersection at Taylor and Palmer that would basically be a choke point for traffic and issues in that area. So what I would like to propose for that is a traffic study with our engineering firm, EMH&T, one of the largest in Central Ohio. And their proposal would actually go through and study everything from 70 to Broad Street, including things like traffic counts, turning lanes, traffic lights, things that are very familiar with that particular thing. Mm-hmm. This would be in partnership, obviously, with Etna Township, Violet Township, Pickerington, Tasla, ODOT, and Morpsey to kind of look all the way through what the best options are. The funding plan that is presented to you is an agreement with EMH&T not to exceed $49,000. The city of Reynoldsburg is willing to pay everything up front. And then after all costs have been incurred, $16,000 reimbursement from Etna, which is basically that 1/3 of the cost, or I guess you could say geographically in that one particular area that would be there. This is not to do anything other than to figure out what are the best options. And again, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I cannot say, is a roundabout the best option? Is it more just an expanded lane structure? Whatever the case may be. Whatever EMH&T comes up with, and at that point, then it would be presented to all parties involved, multiple public hearings because of the fact of how this is going to impact the entire area in general. Then we would come together, and as a group, all of us would kind of agree about what it would be. And we will let people who are a lot smarter than me figure out what that construction schedule would look like. I don't know if it is in the best interest to start things ahead of time or wait until their project is done, or vice versa. However, it allows Etna and the city of Reynoldsburg to go ahead and start planning for budgeting purposes. So that way, when we look whether the construction would be in something in 27 or beyond, that we're planning out ahead of time to have a good relationship with them. I'm happy to take any questions. For everybody out there, if you're interested in looking at this, it is not the most exciting project that is out there right now, but it is on the Ohio Department of Transportation website. You can take a look at it. They are very generic examples right now. It doesn't get into the weeds specifically of everything, but it does give you a general idea. The best example that I could say is if you've ever driven over off of Diley Road and 33, that basically is what ultimately it will look like there as far as the Taylor Road into the Pickerington area. That kind of gives the best idea, but obviously a lot of things can change engineering-wise. Other highlights that I know that we've talked about in multiple meetings over the last couple of months with ODOT, as well as all the other stakeholders, pedestrian trails, things of that nature, bypass, so that way it would all be incorporated into the intersection portion, which then would obviously try to extend all the way out into that Palmer intersection. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
I'm assuming due to this timeline, there's no urgent need right now to...
It only gets more expensive from here, so obviously when January 1 comes, then it becomes a question of what does the engineering firm decide the cost? Do they have cost increases, things of that nature? Do I think it would be a dramatic impact on everything? No, but at the same time, again, that's why I just wanted to get it to you now so that way you have some time to take a look at it.
I just think we need to, as a township, do a more holistic approach. I tried to move forward master transportation study of the township because to deal with things piecemeal, you're not really connecting everything. If it's going to get busier here, how's it going to flow and affect there? So I would like in the new board, and I've seen the other candidate indicate the same thing, that would be needed. So I would think, maybe we would go with something like EMH&T. They can combine it if it's somebody else doesn't make sense to two separate. So I would almost like to put that off to let us look at having that master transportation study and then see what their recommendations are of joining with that or...
The only thing I would say is I know that ODOT is getting all of their information from Morpsey that's taking into consideration all the impact of everything as a Licking County region specifically because of Intel and all the other things ancillary around it. So my assumption is that EMH&T or any other engineering firm is actually already in the process of doing that, and that's where that information would come from. But I completely understand, you want to make sure you don't want to do the same thing twice. So.
Yeah, and definitely I think we do need to plan infrastructure, and that's been one of the major complaints about dealing with what's coming in. So we've got to deal with it, but I think, again, holistically instead of this, but maybe we can incorporate it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, before, what I don't want to do is I don't want all of a sudden to be 2026 and then all of a sudden we're getting around to it at that point. Now, this is one of those few things. We all know that this is going to be a bottleneck. It's difficult as it is right now, let alone with the development all the way up and down Main Street, everything else. But I defer to when you would like to do it, but I wanted to get this in front of you as soon as I have the opportunity to we had to wait until we had kind of an idea from Morpsey what they were saying as far as when they're going to have all their traffic count information. Are there any other questions?
You said it was going all the way to Broad Street, this study was between.
Yeah, it's with everything that's going construction-wise and development-wise, they wanted to take a look at anything because is there going to be traffic impacts from Intel coming off to Broad Street? Is it going to be something coming on in through Patasko, through Refugee and First Gate? Is it going to be going all the way down? So instead of doing it only just for that one specific intersection, that's why they wanted to look at everything all the way around to take into consideration what it would look like in 2028 and then beyond in 2038 based on everything that we have. And because this is something that's a little bit more our latitude, we can actually make assumptions about what areas are development. So we would look at current zoning that is in Patasko, Reynoldsburg, and Etna Township based on what you have all presented as far as what could potentially go there at some point in the future. There's not a lot of room for development in this corridor, but at the same time, you don't know what's going to happen if people decide to. Once I think it gets known that everybody's going to, look at their property on that road and Taylor Road by an intersection that they want to live by there, what happens at that point in time. So there'll be a lot of concerns and considerations, and we just want to make sure that we're ready for whatever could come our way.
We'd be giving accomplice some past us property and everything too. Like, would they be a participant in this?
They would be, but we're taking up on the cost for it because it doesn't really impact, because right now we pretty much control and maintain the road on Taylor Road all the way to Broad Street, so that's something that we have anyway. So that's why we don't necessarily have them included as far as a cost-sharing partner. However, I'm a big believer in trying to get as many people around the table as possible, so that way, whatever we do at 70 and Taylor, or Palmer and Taylor, now all of a sudden that's going to impact it, Maine and Taylor, and then on all the way. It's better to have everybody sitting around to make sure we all know what's coming and how we can prepare for it.
And to refresh the board's memory, that MS Consultants, I think it was $43,000 for township-wide transportation study in that. So that's where I'm saying maybe we should look at the comprehensive to include that. That was last year. I brought it to forward.
I wouldn't be surprised if they had to put a lot of pause on that because of probably when it was started, it was just at the beginning of Intel.
The board just turned it down. They didn't take it up.
Okay, all right, yeah, I was gonna say, because that probably, everything that they thought they had done, they probably had to throw in the trash and start from scratch, so. But at any time you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at any point in time after the first of the year or prior to if you have any further questions. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mrs. Hanson, do you have anything on that?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. We can now go ahead and move over into public comments, please. Please come up to the podium, state your first, last name, and address for the record.
Sarah Ferguson, 43 Ballman Road. So as far as the Pike Street development, my input on it would be that I do like the idea of having the bike paths and the sidewalks. So whatever the township could do to help the residents with having those type of amenities, I think that they should do. Especially if, we have the money, I think it's something to give back to the community. In regards to Northburg Mayor Joe Begney's speech, personally I think that would be a great idea to be included and be a part of that study, just from going to that area and seeing the development that's happened in that area and the projects that have happened down Main Street, the big overhaul that has happened from replacing all of the sewer and fiber optics lines. That was a huge undertaking that government institution took this year. So I think that having that experience would be very helpful for the township. Just after hearing what he had to say. Because it is that 70 interchange that's coming is gonna be a huge deal. I'm extremely excited about it, so I don't have to go by Walmart traffic or go all the way up to 310, because Etna extends all the way to Taylor Road, and I think people forget that there are huge parts of Etna that is in Reynoldsburg School District. And I think that a lot of times maybe the township forgets that how big the township is, and making sure all of its residents in all areas are accounted for. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments tonight? Okay, going once, going twice. Okay. I would like to move to go into executive session per Ohio Revised Code 121.22. G1, to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, or the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, official license, or regulated individual, specifically the investigation of charges or complaints against an official or the individual. Okay, official, and the time is now 7:07. I invite the session. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. So that was Jeff. Okay, I would like to invite executive session, the all trustees, please, as well as our attorney, Julie Donham, into executive session. Is there a second? Which you did. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. Okay, the time is now 7:07.
Okay, I'm gonna pause the recording.
Are we probably going to?
Yeah, we're gonna pause it.